Welcome everybody to this session on two new dashboards which we have. They're data visualization dashboards for physical books retention and for physical books deselection. So that's physical books retention, the dashboard which we're looking at now. I'm just going to do a little filter here. So this is the retention, meaning that this is a data visualization workbook specifically designed for deciding which items in my institution do I want to retain, do I want to make sure I keep, as opposed to this other dashboard here, which is books deselection. And this is for deciding which items perhaps I want to deselect, which is another word for removing, weeding, or simply getting rid of, or perhaps moving at least to a remote storage where they'll be taking up less valuable space or real estate in the libraries. So let's begin by looking at accessing these workbooks. First of all, I'm calling them workbooks because that is the official term used by the data visualization. Colloquially or in everyday discussions, people often refer to them as dashboards, perhaps because they behave very similar to dashboards in the sense that they have multiple visualizations, tables, graphs, etc. Tabs, the tabs here on the bottom. So they're often called dashboards. Technically speaking, they're called workbooks. So that's just a little terminology. So as far as accessing these workbooks, I'm now, for example, logged in as a user who does not have the Designs Analytics role, meaning when I come to Analytics here, I do not see Access Analytics. However, as you can see, I do see links here to both of these workbooks, the books deselection, the books retention, and can click them and the corresponding workbook will open, whichever one I clicked on. So to access them, I'm going to remove these pinned objects just so we can see how do we access them? How do we make it so we can access them? I'm going to remove both of these. And if we come to analytics and out of the box analytics, I'm choosing out of the box because these are workbooks which are already supplied with Alma. So they're out of the box, ready to use. So if we click out of the box, we see all of those that are ready to use. And you can see here books retention, books deselection. They happen to be where they are right now because I am sorting this by object creator descending. Let me do it by object date just for the fun. Now they're on top because they're the most recent. Of course, we could also just search here. But let's not digress and do a session on analytics objects. Suffice to say that they are listed here in the out-of-the-box reports. And then once you have them, you can pin these to your analytics. So for example, if I click here on the action items, these three dots, I can say pin to analytics menu and pin to analytics menu. So right now I do not have them, as you can see. I remove them. It says no analytics objects were pinned. And now I will pin to analytics menu and this one also, pin to analytics menu, and now I have it here. So that's accessing these new workbooks if you are not a analytics designer, or even if you are an analytics designer, you can do it this way. Let's also, before we jump in and start investigating these workbooks, let's see where they're located within the whole analytics structure. Because later in the session, we're going to take these workbooks and copy them to our institutional folder in the event that we want to make some changes or investigate how are they made, what fields are they showing, what filters are being used, etc. So let's log in now as a user who does have the analytics role, designs analytics role. so that we can then go into analytics and see who is using this. Excuse me, how is this being made? We'll be able to take it, copy it to our institutional folder. So right now we're going to pop in as someone who does have the designs analytics role. So I'm going to sign out here, and we will sign in again as a user who does have the designs analytics role. We're going to go into analytics, and we're going to see where are these. So I'll say analytics, designs, and access analytics. This is not a mandatory event activity to use these workbooks. I'm merely showing where are these workbooks located. And if we go to the catalog and go to Alma, let me get rid of this ABC because we're going to use this later. So I'm just going to remove this one, more delete. So the new data visualization workbooks are under the Alma folder, and then under inventory, and then under data visualization, and here they are. We could open them right from here. I went in this time through analytics, access analytics. I could have gone in through analytics, access data visualization. In a previous session, we had pointed out that it's the same catalog being used by both analytics and data visualization. Here on the top left, I'll go to the navigator, go to the catalog, go to the shared folders, and again, we'll navigate to Alma. Alma is the folder with all of the out-of-the-box reports, data visualization workbooks, analytics, dashboards, etc. It's a read-only folder. And again, we'll go to inventory. And again, we'll go to data visualization, and here they are. So that's where they're located, and that's how to access them. One other administrative, let's call it, point that I want to make is when we're talking about retention, this book's retention, there are ways to define in Alma that we want to retain an item, and there are also ways to define that we want to retain a bibliographic record. There are roadmap plans, by the way, for retaining a holdings record. And we gave a session. I'm going now to the Alma 2024 Roadmap Webinar Series. I will send everybody a link right now in the chat to this page, though I assume everyone's got it. And we gave a session on February 13th on physical inventory retention in Alma. And I will be referring briefly during today's session to how we define that the item can be retained. If anyone is interested, you can come here and view this recording or look at the PowerPoint, though you got a recording here as well. So this is in a sense a follow-up to that. On February 13th, we saw how can we define items to be retained. Now we're really talking about why would I define an item that I want it to be retained. So that's it for our administrative issues. And now we're going to jump right in and start looking at the workbooks. So let's come back. Let's access them as a pinned object. So I will close all this because typically that is how they would be accessed. Someone would come here and then come to the pinned object. So I do not have them as a pinned object right now, so I'll pin them and access them that way. So I'm in the out-of-the-box reports. Here's the books deselection. Here's the books retention, and I will merely say pin to analytics menu, pin to analytics menu, and let's begin. So we'll start with the books retention. So here we are, pinned to objects, books retention, and it opens in a new tab. So the whole point of this dashboard is to provide the institution with insights as to what do I have for single copies, perhaps that I want to retain. When I say single copies for one title, I only have one item, one physical item for a title. And I want to make sure that it's not going to get removed, that a cataloger or inventory operator is not going to withdraw it, or that it won't be part of a set that at some stage I run a job on to remove. As you can see here, there's a description already on the page here. There are tabs. You can see on the bottom 3 tabs: retention, single copy details, and documentation. Both of these workbooks have the built-in documentation. The documentation, I'm going to click that tab, is already built in here, describing the different parts of the workbook. And we've been updating this quite a bit. These are very new. So as with most new things, we tend to make updates to it as they go along, as customers make comments, etc. So it's constantly, like all of Alma, constantly being updated. I'm going back to the retention, which is the landing tab or the initial tab someone gets there. So as it states here in the books retention tile, the records which are in this dashboard are those with resource type as book physical, and the number of physical items is 1. In other words, if I go back to Alma, it's all of those that have, I'm going to put in here, resource type. All of those with a resource type, these are all the different resource types, and it's those which have books physical, book physical. And that the title has 1 item. So for example, if I come here, this has 1 item. Yes, has 1 item. None are available right now, but it has 1 item, and it's books physical. So it will be included in this dashboard, provided all my other filters meet the criteria, etc. But it's taking those with a resource type of book physical, and that there's 1 item. So sorry about that, wrong tab. And let's continue. So that's what's included in here. When we say 1 title, we don't mean 1 MMS ID. We mean 1 actual title. So if there is, for example, Studies in Library Science or Introduction to Library and Information Science, 2 titles with 2 different MMS IDs, and either the normalized title and or the 035 match on those 2 titles, then that will be considered 1 title. And it says that here matching is based on the OCLC control number. If there is no OCLC number, it's matched up by the normalized title and author. Data is derived from the physical item subject area. So everything here is in the physical item subject area. We're going to see in the second half of today's session how we can actually see what subject area is being used and what it's being used. So let's do a filter up here on top. There's a lot of different filters in here. And I'm going to filter by 1 specific library. And you'll see everything will change here once I filter by that library. So I'm going to click library name here on the top left. And I'm going to filter by the library and information science library. So here we are, the library and information science library. So now I'm filtering by 1 library. And let's take a look at what we got. So there are a total of 367 titles in this library that have only 1 copy. Only 1 physical item, whether it be a DVD or a book or a LP, a record, a 45, for those of you who may remember what a 45 is. So 367 of those titles have only 1 item. Altogether, there are 639 total titles. Let's see if that's really true. So if I were to come now to Alma and I was to do, for example, a physical titles advanced search, again, I'll say resource type equals books physical. And then if I were to say, I'm going to do a plus here, and I would also say that the library equals the library and information science library, then there are a total of 639 titles. And so analytics was correct, at least in this case, that we really do have 369 titles with book physical as the resource type in this library. Of those, 376 only have one item. So the idea here is, if there's only one item, perhaps you want to make sure it won't get deleted. To make sure it won't get deleted, you can give it the retain field. For example, I'm going to take this first one and I'm going to go to the items just to point out what is this retain. I'm going to edit this. So we added a field. And again, this field that I'm pointing out is what we explained in this session here. And that field is here, committed to retain. If we say committed to retain yes, then the item cannot be deleted. Not via an API, not via a job, not manually. It can't be deleted. I'm not going to give it yes right now because I want to continue with an example that it's not. So that's the item committed to retain, just as a refresher. So let's go on now on the dashboard. So of these, 22% of them, or 83, I hovered over the pie there, 83 of them, which is 22%, are marked to retain. They do have yes there. And 293 do not. So of this 376, 293 are not marked to retain, and 83 are marked to retain. Of those that are single copies, of these 376, here's the breakdown by what we call the LC classification group 1. The LC classification group 1 comes from the holdings record call number. I'm going to go over here to the LC classifications documentation of the Alma Analytics. And as we can see here, it says the LC classification information is derived from the holdings record for the physical item subject area. So it's coming from the holdings record. And why would I have, for example, libraries and general bibliography? So this is a Z. If it has between a Z1 to 1000, it's libraries. And if I'm not mistaken, general bibliography would be Z1001 on. And all of that is here. This is the Library of Congress classification outline. And for example, if I were to go into Z here, I'm clicking Z on the bottom. This is the Z. It includes libraries and bibliography. I'll click that. And we'll see here that Z1000, I believe it's 1000. Yeah, let's just do a control F for libraries. Libraries. It's Z9999 to Z1000 is, oh, that's library. Oh, here, libraries. Z719 to 723. General bibliography is Z1001 to 1121. So if the call number in the 852H of the holdings record is between this, it will be general bibliography. And if it is between 719 and 723, it will be libraries. And we can do a spot check later. We're going to be looking at tables that include the actual items. And all of this is interactive. For example, we said that we already know that of my single copies, or to be more exact, of the items that are the only item of a title, 22% of them, or 83 of them, are marked to retain. If I want to see now, but what about of those in the topic of libraries here? So if we click libraries, you'll see this is going to change and this is going to change. It's interactive. So now I'm going to click that, and now everything else is updating. Now it's 20% and 79%. If I click here on the general bibliography, so now I'm looking only at general bibliography. There are 16 titles with one copy, 35 overall titles, and that's on the general bibliography. I can undo the fact that I just checked that. There's an undo button here, and we start going back to where we were. And now I'm back. We can also always refresh up here on the top. This is in the browser. I'm clicking the reload the current page, and that brings us right back to where we were. So again, I'm going to come down here to Library and Information Science Library. That happens to be one of my more important libraries, understandably so. And that's where we want to focus. So it's interactive. It's not only that I can click on a tile here. This is called a tree map of the subjects, but I can click anywhere here if I want to see among those that are marked for retention. So I can click, for example, this top of the pie here, and then everything else. So now of those 49, there are 49 now only, less. 49 with topics libraries. So that's the first tab. Then we have the single copy details. I'm switching to the next tab now on the bottom. And these are the details with different breakdowns than we just saw. So again, I'm going to filter here by library name, Library and Information Science Library. Here we are. And now we're filtered down to that one library. So here again, we have the breakdown of the LC classifications, this time in a map and a table format. The breakdown by locations, all of mine are in the open stacks. I do have other locations, but there's no single copies there. For example, I have a periodicals location where it would be rare that one title would have one item. It could be, but it would be rare. And now these are the single copy details. So let's just take an example here. I'm going to say, here's one, libraries. So if I wanted now the LC classification, I'm going to filter up here. LC classification, I'm going to say I want libraries here. Okay, so now we got a smaller set, 236. And you can see now, if you look at these permanent call numbers, I'm just going to scroll random. Let's go take this one. So this is the Green Library, the Challenge of Environment Sustainability. The Green Library. So let's go take a look at that. The Green Library. That should be enough. There we are. The Green Library Challenge of Environmental Sustainability. Die Grüne Bibliothek. So we have here one item. Call number is Z769. Z769, we had said that's libraries. Z769, I'm back into that Library of Congress table. And Z769 would be in here, libraries. So we're all set here. By the way, these start to get group 1, group 2, group 3. They start getting more specific as it moves in. But we're looking at the top level, group 1. So here we could, if we wanted, take these and export them. For example, I'm going to say here, marked for retention, no. So now I have all of the items in my institution. This is an important part that I'm going to state right now, because now we're going to be taking action on the results of this workbook. It's not just some academic exercise of how fancy can we make a workbook, or what do we see, and how, do we have a tree, a tree map or a pie? We want to actually take action and make a change based on what we're seeing here. So we're seeing that I have items in a certain topic. It might be a topic very important for the success of my institution. In my case, I'm saying the topic called libraries in the Library and Information Science Library, and I know that these are items which are the only item of that title, because the whole workbook here is single copies. I filtered by it does not have marked for retention. Marked for retention is no. And now I'm going to export this table. I'm going to right click on the bottom and I'll say export to a file. And I'll say I want this as a CSV and save. And let's rename that. I'm going to say here that this is marked for retention, no topic libraries. And I will also, since we're going to be having a session later today, another session, I'll call this session 1, just so we don't get confused later. And I'll even spell libraries properly. Okay, so I've exported this to a file. If I want to make a set in Alma with this, I need the MMS ID. I don't need to delete all the other columns. I'll get rid of the library name here. It goes across left to right, and first time it finds a match, it makes a set. So we will take this, we'll leave MMS ID here as our first one. Let's fix that. That's not an Alma issue, that's an Excel issue. You can play around with your Excel, or if you opened it in Notepad, that wouldn't happen. But I'm going to fix that to make them real MMS IDs by formatting the cell as a number with no decimal places. Okay, so now we got MMS IDs. So now we can take this and we can make a set. And then when we make a set, we can then run various jobs on it. So let's make a set now. We'll come into Alma and we'll say, let's go into Alma. Actually, you know what? I think let's save the barcode here. We'll get rid of these. So now the barcode is the first one because we're going to make a physical item set. So let's come into Alma. Admin manage sets. And here we can create an itemized set. Clicking create itemized set on the top. I'll call this session 1, books marked for retention with no topic, or as I wrote here, topic. This will be set content type physical items, and I'm going to build it from a file. Let's not make it private. So I'm going to choose here from a file. Choose that file that we just made. Create. So that's now making a set of all of those items. The set's already ready. I'm going to refresh here. So now this, I'm going to click content. Here's our set. These are all of the items in the Library and Information Science Library with topic libraries, which only have one item. And if I want to change these so they will be marked to retain, then I can come and run a job to do that. Admin, run a job, and let's filter here by information update. And change physical items. Here we are, change physical item information. Then I would choose the set. Then I would state here, set item committed to retain yes. And that would change all of the items to committed to retain yes, as was demonstrated and explained in this previous session. So that's how we can take all of the items from the results of a workbook and change them all to committed to retain. We can also do the opposite, by the way, and say committed to retain no, and do a global update. So let's even do it, but let's do it just on one. I'm going to take just the first one, International Comparative Studies, because I don't want to change all of these. So I'm going to take just the first one, just so we can see how does that job really run. And I'll save this again as just one. And what works for one item works for thousands of items, millions even. So let's do it again from scratch. We're going to create a set now. We'll say manage sets, create itemized set, and we'll call this now just one. Won't make it private. It'll be physical items from a file, choose the file. We'll get that just one, create. And let's make sure there's only one in there because I don't want to change my whole, I'm clicking content, I want to change all of my repository. There's only one, International Comparative Studies in Information and Library Science. Ooh, I definitely want to retain that one. So we'll say admin, run a job. We will take the information update type. By the way, we could also just search here for physical items. HYSAC, that should do it. There we are. So withdraw, rebuild, export, delete, create, change physical items information. We'll choose that set that says just one. We'll change it, committed to retain, yes. Let's even choose a retention reason. Library's last copy. Retention note. I changed this during the webinar. And that should suffice. Next. Set size 1. I wanted to make sure I'm not ruining everything. Not changing everything. Here's our changes with the yeses. Submit. And that will take probably a few seconds only. All right, it's done already. There was just a message on the Alma list this morning about how this appears twice, and here we see it live. Okay, so let's go take a look at that. Admin manage sets. If we look at that item again, it should be committed to retain. Okay, first of all, we see the icon that it's committed to retain. And if we look at the item, I'm going in, here it is. It's got the library, it's got the reason, it's also got the note that I put in, and I'm going to say committed to retain no, and get rid of all this, just so I can put it back to the way it was. So that's the books retention workbook. The plan now is to go look at the books deselection workbook and then see how we can copy this workbook to a local folder in my institution so that I can then go change it, see how it's built, etc. But I will stop for a moment and take a look at the chat and see if there's any questions or comments. I don't see any questions or comments. So it's been 35 minutes already with no question or comment. So let's just do a sound check that you hear me and everything's fine. Someone, if you hear me, just say, yes, we hear you and everything's good. Just so I know there's no technical difficulties. Okay, people hear me. Great, thank you. Let's go now and continue. So now that's the books retention. Let's go close this and let's go into the books deselection. So again, analytics, we'll get it from our pinned objects and books deselection. So this one also has tabs, also has documentation, and we will begin in the overview tab. Now we're not going to go through all of the tabs here. They are well explained in the documentation tab. You can see here on the bottom, I'm moving along the tabs. We have this documentation tab as well. I'm going to start here in the overview tab. And we stated that the previous workbook, which we looked at, the books retention, the whole idea was to say, what do I have that I want to make sure I keep? Here, the books deselection, we're saying, what do I have that perhaps I can remove? What perhaps do I not need to keep on the shelves with all this valuable space being taken up? So that's the insights this one's supposed to give. I'm in the overview tab, and as the name suggests, it's giving a very general overview. And then for more details, we can go into the different tabs, and we will go into the different tabs. Like the books retention, you see on the top all kinds of filters here. I'm going to filter this one, for example, by the library and information science library. So now I've limited it to the items in one specific library. What's in this one is, again, all records with resource type is book physical, just like the last one. And the item is not committed to retain, meaning it's either no or it's null. And that's all explained here in the details. Records in this dashboard are those with resource type equals book physical, and then committed to retain is no or null. There is an exception, and we're going to be looking at it, and that's the tab called P&E overlap, where I have my mouse on the bottom now. That's the physical and electronic overlap. So there, it's not limiting by books physical. And we're taking data here from the physical items, the titles, and the fulfillment subject area. So on the top here, we filtered by library and information science library. And what do we have here? Total physical book titles 62, titles not committed to retain 44. I want to go right to the P&E overlap, because this one is personal, a personal comment that I think this is the most important one. There's a lot of talk all the time about space in the library and everything. And when there is a electronic version of something, perhaps there's no need to keep something that you also have electronic access to. So I'm going to focus here, but I will point out, and you can focus on your own. We're already 40 minutes into the session. We have another tab here. I'll click it for a moment. That items with no loans. So if I come into here, the Library and Information Science Library, and I have these items that haven't been loaned, and I can see in the creation calendar date, I'm going to sort here earliest to latest. So I've got items in here that were created in 2011 and never loaned. That means they've been in the library for 2024 minus 2011 years. What is that? 13 years. And they haven't been loaned. Now, maybe they are important. There's all kinds of considerations to take into account. However, perhaps we don't need it. Perhaps. Something to take into account. But when there's P&E overlap, I'm clicking now the P&E overlap, well, all the more so, we might want to consider removing it. So let's filter here, for example, by LC classification. Let's take libraries again. A topic near and dear to us. So these are items that have a physical version and electronic version. So let's take, for example, bibliometrics and citation analysis, just as an example. And we come here and we say all titles. I'm just confirming what is in the results there. Bibliometrics and citation analysis. So we have an electronic version from the Internet Archive, Library and Information Science, full text. We also have a physical version. Perhaps we don't need this physical version because we have it electronic. Let's randomly choose another one. I'll scroll down. Career opportunities in library and information science. Career opportunities. That should cover it. Here we are, career opportunities in library and information science. We have two electronics, one from the Gales Engage collection, one from the Internet Archive, and we have a physical one. Again, we may want to consider, not necessarily get rid of it, but consider getting rid of that. Here's another one, careers in focus. We'll just look at one more. Careers in focus, library information science. Careers in focus. Again, we have the electronic, we have the physical. perhaps we can remove one of them. Most likely removing the physical, saving space in the library. Uh, Again, we can take this list, and if we want to act on it, we can do something with it. So let's export this list. I'm going to right click anywhere, say export it to a file, and choose a CSV. And let's save that. And again, we'll reload it. Exporting data. That wasn't a very big list. It should be exporting. Then we're going to make a set on this. If we save the MMSID, then we can save it as all different kinds of sets. For example, perhaps we'll save it as a physical title set. And then theoretically, we could run a job on it after checking it and confirming with everybody, et cetera, that we really do want to get rid of these. We could remove it. Let me just try that one more time. Let's see what happened there. I'm going to refresh this page a moment. And then we'll export again. So I'm in the books deselection. We said we want library and information science. Let's take LC classification. Maybe we'll take bibliographies this time. Another topic we all like, bibliographies. Okay. Oh, we could also do location and P&E overlap. Let's take libraries. Okay. Export to a CSV. Okay. And let's rename this Session 1 P&E overlap topic libraries. So now I can take this file and let's make the MMSID be the first column. And let's format those cells properly as a number with no decimal places. And we'll save. So now we can come into Alma and say again, admin manage sets, create an itemized set, give it the same name as the input file, though that's not necessary. We'll make it a physical title set from a file. We'll choose the file. Let me close it first. We'll choose the file, create. So now it is making the set. Let's refresh. There she is, it's done. So all of these, if I click content, these are bibliographic records that have an active physical item, meaning not a deleted one, a physical item. And there is, for the same title, an electronic version. So they're candidates for weeding, deselecting, whatever. I may want to move them to a remote storage, or I may want simply to delete them. I'm going to say here, admin run a job, and then I could say withdraw them. So there's a withdraw type here with all the different withdraws. And I could say delete the bibliographic records. And I could say while I'm deleting them to delete the inventory, because they can't delete a bib record with inventory. Delete all associated inventory resources, and this would delete them. By the way, if I have the item marked as retain, it would not delete them. Back to our previous workbook. So I could come and delete all of these records, which I'm not going to do live. because they have also electronic resources. There's a lot more in this workbook to look at, which for time reasons we're not going to do, but the tabs are pretty self-explanatory. By the way, there's a tab here, physical items with E. So this is like the P and E overlap, but it's only showing the P. I got only the P when I say the P, the physical. I got only the physical because I went and made a physical item set with that input file. But here we've got only the physical on the bottom and not the electronic, but it's the same overlaps. Okay, so let's now see if there's any questions or comments. Then I want to talk about how do we see how these workbooks are made, and if we wanted to change them, how would we do that? So I'm just going to take a look in the chat. Can you explain what's in the loan ratio tab on the deselecting workbook? Yes, there's a nice explanation here in the documentation. I'll come in here for explanatory purposes. But for example, if we say, I'll take a small amount so we can see exactly how it is. This is a ratio of the number of loans against the number of items. So if there's 3 items and 3 loans, that's a high ratio. A low ratio would be a lot of items. Like here, it's only 0.1 because there were 1,658 items and only a total of 21 loans. If we want to see how exactly did we get to that, we could do the actual math. This is 21 total loans out of that. If I were to say here, 21 divided by, what is my total here? 1658. We have 18 and 3 is 21 loans, 1658. We'll see exactly. So 0.1, excuse me, 0.01, 0.01. The total number of loans divided by the total number of items. And you would want a higher number, because if we have 50 items and 50 loans, then that would be 1. 50 divided by 50. Let me just confirm that. But yeah, it's a number divided by itself. So you would want the higher one. Oh, that must be a movie or something as well. So you would want a higher number. Well, I shouldn't say you would want. I would say the higher means the more loans. Here you've got 9 loans in 8 items. So it's even more than 1 because you have more loans than the number of items, because 1 item is most likely loaned several times. But again, we've got that in the documentation, low item to loan ratio, and you got it here. Okay, and loan ratio here. Any other questions or comments from anybody? If that didn't answer your question, person who asked it, feel free to send it in with more clarification. Okay, so let's move on now to the, maybe I want to know how is this being made, or what subject areas, or I want to call it something else. So I can take the dashboard and copy it to my institution folder. So let's say I come into Analytics, Access Analytics. And now I want to copy this to my institution folder so that I can play around with it. So I'll come into Catalog, and first of all, I'll make a new folder in my institution. So my institution is called Demo Alma University. And I'll make a new folder. I can make it under Reports, wherever I want. I'll make it right here on top, just so I know where it is. And I'll call this Workbooks Morning, or Workbooks Session 1. Then I can take these workbooks, which I already have, under Inventory, Data Visualization. I'll select them both, and on the bottom here, I'm going to choose copy. Then I can come to the folder I just made under my institution folder. Again, my institution is Demo Alma University. In your case, it'll say the name of your institution, often with the code as well. Then we'll go into that new folder and paste. I copied both of them. It'll take a second or two. Then we'll have them here. Then we're going to open them. Here they are. Now I can do whatever I want with them, and I can see how are they made. So let's take, for example, the books deselection. That's the first one we looked at. I'll click open. Even though I'm in analytics, it's a data visualization workbook, so it's going to open in data visualization. And I could have copied it while in data visualization. This whole catalog area is very similar to the Microsoft Explorer. When you're on your PC, if you click a PowerPoint, it opens in PowerPoint. If you click in Excel, it opens in Excel. Well, here, if I click a analytics report, it opens in analytics. If I click a data visualization workbook, it opens in data visualization. So I'll click open, and it opens in data visualization. So now you can see already something significantly different. Anyone want to guess, what do you see significantly different now that we didn't see before? Let's see if anyone's paying close attention. What do I see now that I open this from a non-read-only folder that I didn't see before? Something very significant. And I'll give one more second. Anyone guess? What do I see now that's different that I didn't see before? That's right. I see now the grammar panel and all the fields here on the left. I see here that it's in the physical item subject area. I see what fields are being filtered. Here I closed it and I opened it. Here I closed it. No, that's the data panel and the grammar panel. Now if I stand on a field, for example, I'm going to stand on this overall titles 530157. Here I can see what field it's showing. Here I can see what it's filtering by. It's filtering by bibliographic details. Resource type is books physical. We stated that at the very beginning that that's what this dashboard's doing. Now I can see it. I'm going to make a little filter here so we can continue playing around with a smaller set rather than my entire institution. And now we can see everything that's going on. If I want to go, these are the titles with more than one item by library. So there's a total of 51 items, 51 titles with more than one item. And here, yep, people answered. Someone said menu on the left, and someone said subject areas and fields on the left. Yep, you guessed it right. So here I can see what the filters are. And I can even say right-click modify filter. Maybe for some reason, I also want the ones that are deleted. Who knows why? I could change the filter here. And that's in all the different parts of this. I'm in the books deselection. I thought I went into the books retention, but that's fine. So I can go into all of these. Let's go into, for example, the P&E overlap. So again, I'm on the table now, so I can see if I had a question, oh, where is he taking this creation date from? Is that from the item? Is that from the bibliographic record, et cetera, et cetera? Well, here we are. Maybe I'm not interested in the creation date. It's taking up too much space, or addition. Addition. Maybe I have no use for the addition. I'll come over here to the grammar panel. It's gone. I could save it, and now I have my own local version without the addition. Give it a second while it's refreshing. And that's how I can make my own. So now I have it without the addition. I can come up here and say save, or save as even, but I'll say save. Workbook is saving. Now I've made my own version. And maybe I don't want only books physical. Maybe I think that's a little too much of a filter. So I can come here on the material type. This is actually done by material, this part here. is doing my material type. On the level of the bib record, I'm getting rid of that. And again, it's refreshing. By the way, it's looking at the material type of the electronic book. Because of course we can't look at the item of something electronic because there is no item. So now I've removed that filter and I've removed the edition. And maybe I want to continue filtering by the creation date. Here's the creation date, but I don't want to display it. So I can come over here and create a filter and say, I want those in the creation date only since 2020. I want only fairly new ones. So I could take any field and say, I want it from 01, 01, 2020 until today. Let's even say 31/12. I have the month in the middle. So now I've made a filter. Here we are on the creation date. I've no longer displayed the creation date and no longer displayed the edition, and I have my own local version here. Someone says the call numbers appear to be coming from the bib record. Well, yes, because here we're looking at the P&E overlap. So we don't have the call number of the item on the part of the bib. If you want to display only that from the holdings record of the item, meaning what's inherited in the item from the holdings record, you could do that by coming here to either the LC classifications and taking the code, or by going to the holding details and taking whatever you'd like from here. So you could display another field here. Let's even say I want call number from wherever, permanent call number. I could take that, let's put it anywhere, and drag it in and display it. But again, here, because we have the physical and the electronic, we could be taking it from the electronic. And I see we're just about out of time. So let's say if there's any final questions or comments from anybody, I'd be glad to hear any questions or comments from anybody. Okay, I don't see any. So thanks everybody for joining. We will be posting the recording as usual to YouTube, and it will be on all of our locations, the training and webinars page, the YouTube channel, and of course, the 2024 Roadmap Webinar Series page that we saw at the beginning. So thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.